Happy New Year, everybody. Hope this dawn of 2024 finds you well. This is the Rocker Dog Podcast, the show that talks to musicians as well as people in and around the music business about their dogs. I'm your host, Tim Dill, under the tutelage of my dog, Charlie, and today we welcome to the show Live Nation Regional Production Manager, Lindsay Jardy, who's the human behind the wonderful Instagram account Backstage Bowie, which documents her lovable golden retriever and the musicians, crews, and concerts she experiences. Lindsay recently added another puppy to the family, and these are her bona fide rocker dogs.
So we are speaking about Bowie and Stevie.
All right. How old are both of these rocker dogs?
So Bowie just turned 10 at the end of October, and Stevie was just born on July 2nd.
Okay, so let's go back 10 years. What was going on with your life to bring Bowie into it?
It's hard to remember this year, let alone 10 years ago, but I was just buying my first house, and it had been 5 years since I lost my last golden. I bought one when I was 12 years old. I'd asked for one, and my parents, they found me a dog in the newspaper, and I loved her and I kept her, but I was very determined that I was getting a golden retriever. So I saved up my money, and I found a local lady who had some golden retrievers and purchased a second dog. So I had two dogs at that point. The first dog's name was Bridget, nice. And the second one was Paige. So the golden was Paige.
And what drew you to golden retrievers in the first place?
So my grandfather, I grew up with basically one grandparent my whole life and was very close to him, and he had a golden retriever. And when he got remarried a few years after my grandma had passed, he wasn't allowed to take the dog with him. And so we took over that golden. And so I grew up with just this amazing dog that was, so loving, and all the things that can sometimes irritate me now, like the, wanting attention and popping your head through your arm and all of that was, something that I just adored as a child. And I still do adore it. Don't get me wrong. But, sometimes you're working and they're just saying, hey, pay attention to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just fell in love with that first one, and it was done for me.
And then when Bowie came around, what inspired the rock and roll name? Were you in the industry at that time?
Yes, I was working at a performing arts center. I've jumped around a little bit in the industry. I started in college, and then I worked for an independent promoter, performing arts center, an arena, and now Live Nation. So I've kind of jumped around a bit, but I was working at a performing arts center. So I had been in the industry at that point for, I want to say 8 years. And I used to know a guy who was a sound guy at a small club that I helped be a promoter rep at. And he named his daughter Bowie. And this was years ago. And I remember thinking like, oh, that's really cute. I would have never thought of that. So when I got Bowie, I pulled up a list I had in a Google document of like, as most women have, all the baby names that you like. And none of them felt like a dog name to me. And none of them were really hitting home. And all of a sudden, Bowie popped into my head, and I just couldn't get rid of it. It was like, okay, that's her name. And of course, being in the industry, I love the tie-in of the music vibe.
Yeah. So Live Nation Regional Production Manager, what does that entail?
Yeah, so I like to say I put together the puzzles for the concerts that come in regionally. I find out what kind of catering requirements they have, security requirements, labor requirements, dressing room furniture requirements, basically everything that the tour needs to see when they walk into one of the venues I'm working. And I make sure that all those pieces are together. A lot of it I hand off to the right people and let them run with it. But basically making sure I know who those right people are, getting everything where it needs to go. And then when they walk in, we hope for a nice, smooth day.
And I noticed that it's not just one venue, like you, and being regional. So what are you, Midwest right now, or what's your region?
Yep. So I work Midwest. I was based out of Missouri for a while, out of St. Louis. So I did a lot in St. Louis and Kansas City were my main markets. And then I moved up to the Minneapolis market in January of 2020, actually, and started up here because I'm from Minnesota, and they needed a little bit more of a full-time person in the market and didn't have a full-time person. So when my boss found out I was from Minnesota, that was his first question: do you want to move back?
Hey, so okay, so given that groundwork, how did Bowie become Backstage Bowie? How did this phenomena of your golden retriever hanging out backstage, meeting the rock stars and the crew and the roadies?
Yeah, so she didn't come with me at first. When I was on the venue side, of course, the venues I worked at weren't dog friendly. So I was used to leaving her at home when I switched over and started working for Live Nation. So the dog friendly company. So I'd bring her into the office when I'd be in the office, but I didn't bring her to the venues at first. I had a good friend who would watch her if I was traveling to Kansas City. So she was always in good hands. But then there was one time I was going to be going, here she comes right here.
All right.
Um, I was going to Kansas City and I was going to be doing, and here comes little Stevie. Uh, I was going to be doing some rehearsals for Jason Aldean. And so I was going to be there for, I think it was 3 days, didn't have anyone to watch her. And so I asked the building whether or not it'd be okay. And the gal was kind of like, well, we do let artist dogs come in and they're only on event level. And if they have accidents, you're responsible for cleaning that up. And I wasn't worried about accidents. And so I checked with the tour to make sure there were no issues with having a dog. And they were like, absolutely not, bring her. And so I brought her with to that show, and seeing the reaction that the crew had and actually watching, it's one of my favorite experiences is when the crew walks in and sees her, their face lifts. Like
Yeah.
you can actually see them become happier just from seeing her. And then now with a puppy and seeing the two of them interact, it's like just this unbelievable joy that you can see coming off of the people. So after that day, it was like, okay, secret weapon. I am bringing her to every show with me. And she has been. I mean, there have been days that probably wouldn't have gone real well, but she was there. And so everyone just, they calm down and they relax a bit more, or they're just put in a better mood because there's dogs around.
Yeah.
Not every tour. There now and again, you might find a tour that, might ask you, or a venue that might ask you to leave the dogs at home, but it's, I would say, less than 1% of the time.
That's good to hear. Have you heard from your superiors or above you that like this is a good thing, keep it up? Yeah.
I've gotten a lot of emails from tours after the fact, especially in the beginning. Now, so many of these tours know them that it's, they just know they're going to be there. But I used to keep a file of emails from tours that would be like, thank you so much for having her here. That was so great for our crew. And then as far as from my own company, there's a group of gals who work with Backstage Hospitality and trying to help create experiences for artists. And I've been told that on their phone calls, they'll actually bring up Bowie and say, like, if you have a dog, people love the dogs. And they've brought her up several times on those phone calls. And then just my supervisors or the bookers in the markets I work in have, made comments where it's usually just a comment of like, I can't believe how well behaved this dog is. And so I take that as a win.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, it's cool because there's some riders that will say in them, if you have a dog, bring the dog. And a lot of times people will do puppy play dates where we'll bring in a local puppy shelter to bring in dogs for the crew. And it just seeing what it does. I mean, it's such a good mental health aspect to a job that can be very stressful and very exhausting.
Yeah, let's get into that a little bit because I've, through this podcast, we always kind of touch upon, the mental health benefits of the dogs. And they're always saying, whether it's their own or when they go to a studio, it's like it just makes you put your guard down. And I think I can't speak for the crew, but for the artist, you're always putting yourself out there. Being an artist is such a personal thing. It's not showing somebody a spreadsheet of definitive numbers. It's putting your heart and soul out to be judged. So I can understand it, but I know you deal with a lot of, the gamut from the artist to the crew. So what do you see in that respect of it being a positive thing for mental health?
Oh, it's fascinating to watch, not only seeing how people physically become happier when they see them, but I've had crew members in my office sobbing because they either just lost a dog or they lost a friend or a family member. And then they come in and they see this dog and they can just relax for a minute and let their guard down and be accepted in a way that maybe they can't do with other crew members. And so it's
Right.
just that, they are always like, oh, I'm so sorry. It's like, no, please. Like, if you want, go around the corner with her. It's totally fine if you want some privacy. But seeing that and so many people make comments about missing their dogs and I even had a production manager make a joke about missing his dog more than his wife and looking forward to getting home to the dog. But it's so true because dogs just have a different aspect in our lives. They're not asking us for anything. They're not judging us. They're just, well, I always say that my dog judges me, but just having them there. And for me personally, I'm a bit of an introvert myself, and my job, I have to be on and I have to talk to a lot of people and I have to constantly putting out fires. And so for me, I do what I call 5 minutes of undivided attention, where I'll just lay on the floor with Bowie and hang out with her, and that kind of recharges me as well. And it's just keeps me, I would say, also because of the traveling, and I know my traveling is just regional. It's not national or international like artists or crew. But even with the traveling, it's being able to still feel that bit of home wherever I am, because she's always with me. And so
Right.
for me personally, it's a huge benefit. I mean, it's one of the best benefits of my job, I believe.
Yeah. Well, let's get into some of the highlights. I can, again, going to your social media, you have a couple things pinned. One of them is that actually Shirley Manson and Garbage called Bowie out from the stage. She said she attended to all our needs with great humor, kindness, and tolerance. She, as in Bowie, gave us all an example to follow. Tell me about that experience.
Oh, that was still to this day probably one of the coolest things that has ever happened. And I've had a couple other artists, and blanking on her name, but her name's Joy and it starts with an O. She opened for John Mayer last year, and she actually evidently said something from the stage about Bowie as well. So there's been a few artists that have shouted her out from the stage. But with Shirley, I was at an amphitheater in St. Louis, and so I had a TV with a live feed of the event. And so I was just sitting at my desk, and there was a couple runners in the room just kind of hanging out. And all of a sudden she starts saying this, and all of our mouths just drop, and we're staring at the TV like, is this really happening? Like, she's talking about Bowie right now. And Shirley is just a legend. She's fantastic. She's so kind. And so I ran into her afterward because my office is right in the dressing room area at that amphitheater. And I said to her, I kind of smiled, and I was like, that's got to be the coolest thing that's ever happened. And she's like, she's the greatest dog ever. And so I think too, it's such a cool experience because I came up in a way of like, you didn't talk to the artist. You gave them their privacy. You didn't interact with them unless, of course, they interacted with you. Don't be rude, kind of a thing. But I came up through a college production company, and that was really drilled home. And so I don't tend to try and make conversation with artists. And, I'm not just going to say something to a lead singer backstage just because I'm walking past them necessarily. I'll smile and be polite, of course. And so Bowie has also created this experience where now I've talked to so many artists that I never would have talked to. I mean, I had a long conversation with Cyndi Lauper about her one time. And so it's been really cool for me as well to experience my job through her and what she's actually brought me through this job.
Yeah, that's great. Another one was Post Malone. Is he one of
Yeah.
the artists that's given her the most attention?
Yeah, it's funny because people will ask, who's the best artist, who's the, worst artist and all of that. And we all have our stories, but the experience of Bowie and Post, I will always remember because he was so genuine. So I did 2 shows with them. The first one was in Kansas City, and it was actually the same day as the Super Bowl parade for the Chiefs. So it was a big day in Kansas City. And it was right before the pandemic. But the tour manager, Angie, had been by my office and met Bowie and had asked, can I bring her back to meet Post? And I was like, of course. So I was out. I don't remember if I was getting doors open or dealing with a security meeting or where I was, but I had happened to leave Bowie in my office. And when I came back, she was gone. And so I was kind of like, oh, I'm sure Angie has her. And when she came back to bring her back to me, she showed me the photograph, and I saw that he had a golden retriever on his t-shirt. And I was like, this is the most epic photo I've ever seen. I go, I can't believe I'm going to do this because I would never do this, but can I post it? And so we went through all the right channels of getting approval from the social media content person on his team, and they approved it. And then I saw them 2 days later in St. Louis and swung by. And so she went in the room with them. And I usually like hide kind of in the hallway close enough so that she knows I'm nearby.
Hmm.
But I don't want to be in your room again. This is your home for the day, and I respect the privacy of people. But she was in there, and then I don't remember if they asked me to come in or what happened, but I happened to walk in the room and he just, thank you so much for bringing her here for me. And was just so genuine and grateful. And it was so crazy to me to be like, of course, like why wouldn't I let her come in and visit? But yeah, he was so nice. And it was the photo, I mean, the photo's epic.
Yeah.
She's gotten her photo with a few other artists. I know she's gotten it with like Backstreet Boys and Hootie and the Blowfish and a few other people, but the fact that he had a golden retriever puppy on his shirt was too
Yeah,
cool.
that was funny. Has an artist come seeking Bowie out? Like I heard Bowie's in this arena, or I've heard he's in this region.
Yeah, absolutely. We there's times we just had a show with Pentatonics where multiple artists came in. They found out about her and they were like, I got to come in and hang out with her. And then the building was going to do a photo where they presented jerseys, and the tour manager was like, as long as Bowie and Stevie are there, we'll do a photo, and kind of joked a little bit because one of the artists had come by when we were out going to the bathroom, and so she missed him. But we have that. And besides artists coming to find them and play with them, one of the coolest things is I will have certain shows where a crew person will be like, "Oh my God, is this Backstage Bowie?" And they get so excited because they haven't met her, but they follow her on social media.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy to me because I'm like, it's just my dog. But people, they follow her and they're obsessed with her as I am. And they get so excited when they finally get to meet her.
Yeah, it's great in the Instagram feed. It's great. It really is nice to see her interact with so many people backstage. One other photo I want to call out was Ryan Adams because he was actually down on the ground on the floor with her, which was very funny, and he posted it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because with the Post Malone one, I think I posted it first and then they posted it on his Facebook page. And I was kind of joking because I was like, oh, I got so much interaction immediately. And all the fans like found it somehow immediately that they were probably like, hey, we got to get some of that interaction too. Cause I used to do marketing. So it was kind of I kind of joked about it a little bit, but yeah, with Ryan, I also did 2 shows with him and it was in 2 different months, I think, but he had met her and he just like he was dang near crawling on the floor with her and playing with her and just interacting. And he's got cats, so you never know if people are gonna like one animal if they're used to another animal. But he was just so hilarious to watch with her because he was just, like loving it and just so kind to her and giving her lots of attention and yeah, he was laying on the floor and I think his tour manager took that photo. And so once he posted it, I was like, okay, it's safe to post. He's posted it online because sometimes you do get those photos and you don't know whether or not you should post it and you kind of keep them for yourself because again, you want to respect the artist and whether or
Yeah.
not it's something they want out there. But
Yeah. Okay. And then one other artist I want to point out was 21 Pilots drummer Josh Dunn, who brought his dog. He's got a golden retriever, Jim, I believe his
yeah.
name. Has there been many times that an artist has had a dog and Bowie's been able to interact with the dog?
So I would say more times than not, when artists have dogs, they're not that dog friendly.
Hmm.
And whether or not that's true, I'm not sure, but that's kind of the vibe I get sometimes from the tour of like, okay, well, once they're on site and their dogs are on site, like, kind of make sure she's not just running off leash or whatever. And so we always do that. But now and again, you'll have, I think it was the guitarist of Hootie and the Blowfish that had 2 golden retrievers
Yep.
and they ran around and played all day long and loved it. And then Jim, we had met Jim 4 years prior to this last time that we saw him. Josh's wife had brought Jim into my room so they could meet. And so they interacted a little bit. And then this last tour, they were running around the bowl before the doors open. They were playing fetch together. I mean, they were so funny and just having a blast. And then at the end of the night, this is one of those experiences where you might not have a photo to post from it, but it just something that I never would have experienced without Bowie. But at the end of the night, I was getting ready to leave and I had Bowie and I had all my bags that I bring with me to shows. And the tour manager stopped me and he's like, "Are you leaving?" And I was like, "Yes, why aren't you? Like this, you shouldn't be here. Production is loaded out. Like, go home." And he goes, "No, no, no, you got to come to Josh's room." And I was like, "What?" Like, because it's just not something I am used to. And so Josh and his wife Debbie were in the room with Jim and they just wanted to chat golden retrievers basically and let the dogs kind of hang out a little bit longer. And the two dogs matched energies perfectly. Like normally that time of night, Bowie can barely move. She's so tired from the day. And she played, I think they played at least a good half an hour. And then we basically all just gushed about how much we love dogs and when we might get a second one. And so I keep watching their account to see when they get that puppy, but I haven't seen one yet.
Okay, well, that's a perfect segue into Stevie. How did Stevie come to be?
Yes. So little Stevie, my little chaos, as I call her right now, because she's only about 5 months old. But I had been debating whether or not I was going to get another dog. And Bowie and I are so connected. We spend every minute of every day together, basically. And prior to her, I only knew outdoor dogs. So it's been a very different experience having a dog with me at all times and living inside. And so, we're very, very close. And my mom had made a couple comments about, "I think you should get another dog," because I think she's worried about that day that Bowie passes as she's getting a little bit older. And I was like, "I don't know. Puppies are a lot of work. I mean, Bowie tore up my carpet. She ate my shoes. She really liked males. And so every time a friend or my father or any man was there, she would just pee." So, so we had our years where she was not quite as easy as she is today. And so I really debated like, our tour is going to be okay with two dogs. Our venue is going to be okay with two dogs. When I have to go do a stadium and can't bring them, are my parents going to be okay with two dogs? And it's two is a lot more than one. And I debated it for quite a while. And I had reached out to the gal where I got Bowie and I just said, "I'm thinking about adding another puppy this fall. Like I want to get through all my stadium shows for the year and then I might have the energy for this." And she goes, "Well, I have a Bowie puppy available on August 20th." And I was like, "What do you mean a Bowie puppy?" Well, Bowie had had one litter 8 years ago. And from that litter, she had a puppy that was named Buffy. And Buffy had had a puppy named Lucy. And Lucy is Stevie's mom. So Bowie is Stevie's great grandma, if you
Oh,
put it
wow.
in human terms.
Yeah.
So when I found that out, it was like, "Oh man, I really think I'm gonna get this puppy now." And I kind of told my family like, "Oh, I'm sure I'm not going to. I'm just gonna go see this puppy, but I don't think I'm gonna do it." And then, of course, as soon as I saw her, I was like, "Yeah, I got to do this." Because to me, I love the thought when I want to get really existential, but I love the thought that Stevie doesn't exist without Bowie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of other dogs that were involved, but without Bowie, there's no Stevie, and I love it and watching them interact. At first, the first 3 days, Bowie wasn't so sure. She just kind of stared at me like, "What did you do?" And now they play all day, every day, and I definitely don't think she knows that it's her blood by any means, but it's something that I find really cool and just love the idea of it and love watching them interact.
Yeah, it's a great addition. Now the name Stevie, I just had another guest who had a Stevie. It could be one of two inspirations. So I'm curious to who inspired your
Yeah.
Stevie.
So I had many conversations with my staff on our long stadium weeks about whether or not I was getting this puppy. And I was like, "I don't know what its name's going to be. And I can't get a puppy if I don't know its name." And, kind of trying to talk myself out of getting another dog, I think. And so then we started going through a list and we were coming up with all kinds of names that were all music related because I really wanted to stick with that theme. Music is my whole life.
Hmm.
It's my career. It's something I've just loved forever. And so we had a list and we had a couple possibilities, a couple things I was thinking about. And then I was sitting there on a show and I thought, well, I kind of want to name her after a legendary female because Bowie, elbow female, and I love Bowie for a female, is named after a male. And so I thought it'd be fun to name her after a female. And so we pull up a list and we're just kind of going through names. And one of my staff said Stevie. And I was like, oh, I like that. And then you also have Stevie Wonder and Stevie Ray Vaughan and like legends. So so she is named after Stevie Nicks, but Stevie Wonder's been on my bucket list for years and I haven't gotten to a show yet. So I just like that it's a name of musical legends.
That's great. Now, is that Stevie right there?
Yep.
Okay, she's getting big.
Oh, she's huge. She's
Oh my gosh, she's adorable. Oh my God.
she was 40 pounds a couple weeks ago at the vet, I think. And I think she'll end up bigger than Bowie. She's watching Bowie with a bone right now, so she's a little distracted.
Sure. Well, I wrap up every show with what I call the Zoomies, and that's 5 quick questions. So the first question is, do you kiss Bowie and Stevie on the mouth?
Not on purpose. I let her give me kisses on the cheek, but every once in a while she'll sneak one in.
Okay. Question 2 is, do they have a theme song? Is there a song that personifies them or a song you sing to them?
No, I would not say a song, but the second show Stevie ever worked was a Lumineers show with James Bay as the opener, and which sparked in my head The Chaos and the Calm, which was an album of his that I enjoyed. And so now I call them Chaos and the Calm when they're acting up.
Perfect. Question 3, you're in the perfect job for this. I know you deal with all the artist needs. If Bowie and Stevie were to tour, what would they insist be on their tour rider?
Oh, all the treats. Tons of treats.
Anything in particular that's their favorite?
They're Goldens. They'll eat anything and constantly hungry. You would swear I hadn't fed them in weeks every time they see food.
It's funny. I've got a golden doodle, and it's always curious to which half that it shows. And he doesn't have the golden retriever appetite. He's so picky with food, and I
say it makes it easier to train.
I was going to say I guess I should count my blessings.
Yeah. I would say all the treats and definitely some tennis balls, and they're happy dogs.
Okay. Question 4 is, do you use a dog voice to speak to them, or do you give them a dog voice?
I don't know that I do. I'm sure there's certain things I say in a certain tone, but I find, and I don't know if this is better or worse, but I find that I talk to them as if they're humans all the time. And like, I'll ask them their opinion on something that they're not going to be able to answer, but I'm just with them all the time. And so I just speak to them like humans. And for other animals, I remember driving through Yellowstone and like creating storylines from the bison, but I don't know that I've done that with these two.
Have you experienced artists giving the dogs, not giving them, speaking to them in a dog voice? Like, does someone go cutesy right away?
Yeah, you get that. And you also will get, some of them will come in and they'll be like, oh, she's saying this to that, or, I can see this. And they'll come up with little storylines. And it's kind of hilarious to get that perspective of what they think the dynamic is.
That's great. That's great what you're privy to. And I respect you for being so private about it and respecting everybody's, boundaries. Last but not least, is there a shout out to a dog organization or service that you'd like to give, whether it's a walker or a vet or whatever it may be?
Yeah, there's a golden retriever rescue up here in Minnesota. It's Retrieve a Golden of the Midwest is the name of it. And if I could and it worked, I would have adopted from them, but it never seemed to quite work, whether it was needing a backyard or not being around strangers. So it didn't work for me, but yeah, so they're ragom.org is their website.
Great. I'll look them up and put some information in your write-up. So what do you have, what's 2024 got in store for you? Do you have your lineup already?
Lots of stadiums.
Lots of stadiums?
Yep, lots of stadiums up here in Minnesota. We've got, I like to say all the greatest hits are coming through, it feels like. Our first stadium will be with Chris Stapleton in April already. So we always love a country tour for many reasons, but they're always extremely dog friendly. So we've got
now April in the Midwest, isn't that going to be rolling the dice?
It is. It's an indoor stadium. However, last year we did Chili Peppers in April and they almost didn't make it due to a storm in Fargo that they were coming from. So yes, absolutely still rolling the dice up here.
All right. Well, Lindsay, thanks for taking the time. I'm very excited to talk to you, and I've been following you for I don't know how long, but it's great to hear the stories behind the pictures, and keep it up. And I hope your account goes to like 300,000 like it should be.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.